Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. Dusty here, as always, joined today by Kelsey Brannan from the PremiereGal channel over on YouTube. She runs her own weekly post-production focused channel, which I just mentioned, called PremiereGal, with over 32 million views. She also runs educational workshops and builds editing tools to help over 475,000 video editors and creators become better storytellers. Kelsey, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, Dusty. It's great to chat with you today here on your podcast. And yeah, I'm excited to get into the deets, the things behind the curtain,
I
per
love
se.
it. I love it. I have told you off air that I'm a big fan. I've been meaning to have you on the podcast now for a while. I've consumed your content for probably 3 years now. I think you are one of the better storytellers and educators on YouTube, and you have a knack for taking complex things and breaking them down into their simplest form and explaining it in a way that anyone can understand. And so I appreciate that. And you are now very close to 500,000 subscribers. That's your
I
next milestone.
know.
And you're not even to 500 videos yet. So you've done that in a very short amount of time. So can you tell
True.
my audience the origin story of the PremiereGal YouTube channel? Tell us the whole nine. How did it happen?
Yeah, well, just to respond to what you just said, I mean, you are fantastic at kind of summarizing my channel better than probably I could give. So thank you for that, Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
But the origin of Premiere Gal I think I kind of always knew that I liked educating and I liked helping people have that aha moment. I had the patience to guide people when I was in college, when I worked at a digital editing lab. And when I was getting into my first few years as a full-time video producer editor, I noticed that, I had to wear a lot of hats. So I had to shoot, I had to know how to do audio, I needed to know how to script, how to communicate with people to make sure the vision was coming to life, and how to edit. And oftentimes with editing, a lot of technical stuff comes up, like sometimes something goes wrong, and I'd have to go online and research and figure it out. And at the time, there were just a few resources online, like a few main channels. Like I think Andrew Kramer was one of the first that really started his own YouTube channel and had success with that. And so through the process of kind of, researching and having to also train other employees that I worked with, I was like, well, maybe I could, share this on YouTube. That's kind of where I get most of my information these days. And maybe it can be an alternative source of income. And I always wanted to try a YouTube channel. I didn't want to do like a vlogging channel. I didn't want to do like a comedy channel. It just wasn't something that I wanted to do. But this was aligned with my interest, my work, and it didn't feel forced at all. So I remember at the time there was a Premiere Bro, BRO, the
Mm-hmm.
bro. And he had a blog and he posted some tutorials as well. And I tweeted at him. This was in the summer of 2016. And I was like, hey, would you ever want a contribution from a Premiere Gal, GAL? And he was like, yeah, like, of course. Like, and we kind of had a little email chain going. And I wrote my first blog post on how to create captions in Premiere Pro. And this is before like the new explosion of those animated captions. This was like very rudimentary, very basic. And I posted a video as well. So I just kind of created the channel. I didn't even think about branding. I didn't even do any of that. I was just like, let's have it be Premiere Gal. I'll make it a ripoff of the Premiere Pro logo, just like the bro did. And let's create the channel. No plan at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just uploaded that first video and it did pretty well. It wasn't me on camera, it was just voiceover, just screen recording, and a lot of people found it useful. And I didn't really have a plan, and I just kind of was like, well, let's just see how it goes. And then I just started posting some more videos as I was a practitioner myself, and I was like, oh, this would be useful. I found this useful. I should share it with other people. So it was kind of like me giving back to the community to be like, hey, I figured this out. I think it might be useful to you. And that's kind of how it has kind of evolved. And that's kind of how I keep doing videos. Although I'm lucky now that it's my full-time job and I have sponsors and I have affiliate marketing and all of that that can enable me to basically, well, I did quit my full-time job, but it's pretty wild, but that's kind of the origin.
At what point along the journey would you say that you thought to yourself, okay, I've made it? because obviously you left your 9 to 5, you left your full-time job, and this is your full-time gig now. So can you think back in the past few years of like when you looked at your channel and you were okay with saying, okay, I made it, like I've not necessarily that you've made it to the finish line, but you've arrived and you're actually a YouTube creator now. That's what you do.
I think I actually, when I started the channel in 2016, it was September of 2017, the following year, that I quit my job. And at that time, I didn't quite make enough to really support. I mean, I was, but it was iffy. But it was a leap of faith that I took. And I was like, if I put all the energy that I have and all of the time into building this, it's just going to grow. But it was also a risk too, because it's like, maybe it wouldn't grow anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of knew like if I'm just putting 50% of my time right now, what could happen if I put 100% in? So it was about a year later. I can't remember how many subscribers I had at that time. And to be honest, it doesn't matter too much. Like even if I had like 50K at the time, you can still make a full-time living on YouTube now with just 50K. Subscribers don't necessarily count as much. It helps, with
Mm-hmm.
sponsorships and brand deals, but the views are what matter. Quality views.
Yeah, I always think of it as like it's a good way to get in the door. If you're trying to approach sponsors or brand deals, like what you just mentioned, you can say, well, yeah, I've got like almost 400,000 subscribers and, whatever. But I found that for my channel, which is solely educational and search based, it's more along the lines of I want to get my daily view count up, right? Like I want to get from, say, averaging
Yeah.
35,000 views a day to like 50,000 views a day. So I have these benchmarks and these goals that I set for my channel as far as where I want to be and when I want to be there. As far as your channel goes, what has been the most difficult thing along these past 4 or 5 years of content creation, and how did you combat that? How did you handle the most difficult thing that you've had to deal with?
I think it came down to kind of time management and like delegating my time to have that balance because, when you do something that's your own thing, you're wearing even more hats. You're dealing with the business side of things, taxes, setting up the company, and then also the creative side of things. So once I got to a point where I kind of felt like I had a good rhythm, I was like, okay, I need to invest in other people and get some editors on the team to help because I didn't want to film and meet a deadline and be up all night editing or anything like that. I wanted more of that balance. So that was kind of the turning point for me. I think it was like mid it was quite a few years later. It was mid 2020 that I was kind of like I need help. Like you can't just do it all yourself. So it was at that point that was kind of like a turning point, and I started working with other people, and it was the best decision ever. I love it. I really love getting their insights and getting their opinions. So it's not like all on you. You've probably heard of kind of
Mm-hmm.
like um, when you're doing stuff all alone, like the imposter syndrome, because you don't get that second opinion of like working on a team. So it's really nice to get that validation from other people. That I think that's so important.
And you
Yeah.
mentioned bringing in other people onto your team for the YouTube channel. As
Yeah.
of right now, 2023 October, as we record this episode, like what does your staff or your team look like?
Yeah, so we have two main staff, me and my partner. My partner manages mainly the brand deals and the sponsorships and like the invoicing and a little bit of the creative too, like sometimes with the brainstorming ideas as well, of course, and helping filming. And then I have three editors who are all contractors. So they're not full-time staff. They're all freelancers, but at the beginning of every month, I basically send out my schedule to them and just say, hey, does this work with your schedule? Because I'm aware that they do other edits as well. And yeah, then they're like, yeah, it's all dandy. Or, can I move this around to trade with somebody else, essentially? Yeah.
So In my community, a lot of folks often ask me, how does the, hiring an editor process work and how does the back and forth go? Can you explain the hiring process of you getting your first contract editor and how you handle the back and forth? Because oftentimes people are worried about the time it's going to take to get the editor up to speed to get them to produce the videos like they want them to produce them. And oftentimes instead of getting people to help, they end up getting kind of overwhelmed instead of putting the time in to actually hiring on and bringing on team members.
Yeah, I think it is a tricky process. You have to be open. You need to write down, I think, for yourself, everything that you do for the video
Yeah.
and how much work you actually want them to do. For example, there's styles of videos that I do now where, I kind of draft out a script of kind of what I'm going to say. I don't use a teleprompter. And then I screen record and just kind of, go over each step, look to the camera, screen record at the same time. And then they just edit it down. But then I realized a lot of the things that was taking a lot of time for me was the writing and the research. So I realized, well, coaching that editor to get that style done just took a couple videos to do and a little bit of patience there for them to understand the style. But once they got that, I was like, oh, I actually need an editor that can also help me script write. So that was the part where, one of the editors that I had at the time, I was like, hey, like, have you ever written anything before? And they were like, not really. And I was like, do you want to try? And he was like, yeah, let's try. And it's been a huge help. Honestly, it's sometimes you don't even realize what you may need help with until you just, have this aha moment and then you ask that question to somebody else because you might be afraid to let that go. But letting that part go and having somebody to help research and write the topics, because now there's a completely different style of editing for those types of videos. Because for those videos that I have him write, he does all of the research, he creates all the demo clips, and he does all the screen recordings. So all I do is read it or essentially look at the script and then recite it to the camera. And then he does all the editing parts, which is great. And of course, there's a higher fee for that because it's more work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that process of coming to that fee is something that we talk about that would be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like say, oh, this is my fee and that's it. I'm very open to the negotiation and for that to change over time because obviously it changed for this editor. So I think you need to be open. And there's been a few editors that I've had too that just haven't worked out. So we tried and they just didn't get that style. And I think immediately that in your gut and you feel it. And you really have to go with your gut in those situations, even though it is hard to be like, sorry, it's not working out. But you have to do what's best for that vibe. And there's so many editors out there right now. And I was lucky to find people that I had admired their work already. So it wasn't like I got like a bunch of resumes and I was like, oh my God, which one do I choose? I actively sought out these people and hunted them down to come and edit for the channel.
That was going to be what I ask you next. How did you find these people, and what would be like an average rate that you pay an editor for a normal video?
Yeah, so I would say that I found them from watching other YouTube content. So, I always wanted to have a little bit of humor in my videos. So I was watching some YouTube channels that have some humor involved, and they had this particular style of editing. And I was like, oh, maybe I can figure out who edited these channels. So I did some like research on like Instagram and, kind of like stalking the channel to see who was like tagged or whatnot. And I found the editor and I just did a cold direct message on Instagram. And Instagram is basically the place where I find most of the people I work with, which
Mm-hmm.
is quite interesting. So Instagram is where I reached out, direct message. Hey, like, I don't know if you know me, but this is what I do. And I'm really looking for some editors to help me out. I like your style. Do you want to have a quick call? And they responded. And then one of them responded too, and they said, actually, I don't have time right now. But then actually, 6 months later, they did have time,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're on the team now.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of happened through Instagram. And then in terms of rates, it varies. I think about like for a 10-minute video about like that's just editing, like basic editing, about 175. And if it's scripting and editing, about 325-ish, a
Right.
little bit more. So around those kind of rates. Again, I will give bonuses on occasion if there's like more work involved or they did a great job. So I always try to put in the bonus to keep them on board.
Yeah, I found a young lady to help me edit my podcast about 2 years ago, and I found her not necessarily through Instagram, but it was social media. It was kind of through LinkedIn, through a personal kind of connection that I had, and I had seen some shows that she edited, and I loved the style and I loved the quality of those shows. And she's not working for me full time; it's all on a contract basis, but I
Yeah.
just it's one of the most nerve-wracking processes if you've never done it before of approaching people to work for you, on your team, because you're then required to give them that work, but doing it on a contractual basis kind of takes that a little bit of hesitancy away, because you're not constantly like, oh my goodness, I got to give them work, and you're worried about meeting a salary or a stipend or whatever that may be.
Right.
In order
Exactly.
to pay people, you obviously have to make money. So let's talk about monetization and how you monetize the PremiereGal YouTube channel. So just for a baseline, what is like an average day as far as like view count for your channel?
View count. Let me see. I just pulled up my studio here right now. Usually I get about 500,000 views in 28 days. So I have
Right.
that info.
So about
Um,
500,000 views in a little less than a month.
yes, exactly. I'm just pulling this up here because I have this thing installed vidIQ, but it's not coming up
I
for some
think
reason.
that if people know, like, can relate, say, like the daily view counts with monetization, I think it's very helpful to see, oh, okay, that's kind of where that is. As in the different niches obviously are going to be different as well. So, if you would just think like an average, I would say 500,000 views in a month, you're probably averaging, what would you say, about 15, 20,000 views a day, something of that nature.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, for some reason my like little thing that tells me the daily thing isn't popping up. But yeah, something like that. Divide 500,000 by
And you're going to get the
28 and
number,
there you
right?
go.
Do a
And you
little
get the
math with
number.
us today. As far as the ad revenue goes, like what's a normal day or a normal month for you on the channel? Just for ad revenue, not for sponsors or affiliates.
Yeah, I think it's changing a lot. And, I actually had a chat with the team recently because we're thinking about, and we can get into this, Dusty, if you want
Mm-hmm.
to, about doing more shorts because I noticed that YouTube is really pushing shorts, especially on the app. I don't know if you noticed, but
Mm-hmm.
when you open it up, it defaults to the shorts page now. So it's like getting you into the short form content. And so I've noticed actually a decline in views over the past couple of months since they've started doing that, which is interesting. But yeah,
Yes.
like, probably around like 3K per month
Mm-hmm.
in this year. And then before that, it was actually more, closer to five. Oh,
Right.
somebody's at the door. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Uh, but it was closer to five earlier in the year, and it's declined a lot. I think because of, I don't know, competition, or it could be the shorts push. It could be a lot of different things involved with that. But people are doing more shorts now. People are doing more shorts now to get more subscribers in to watch that long form content. So we'll see it once they
Mm-hmm.
start doing that early next year if it's made a difference or not.
So I got a lot to say about that, actually. I do believe that about 8 to 10 months ago, I noticed a decrease as well. A lot of it was kind of weird because coming into COVID, like in the midst of COVID, my views like shot up drastically, and I assume yours probably did
Yeah.
too because of
Yeah.
technology and showing people how to do things. But then it kind of averaged back out. But now that I'm back kind of uploading consistently and doing a more consistent upload schedule, I found my views are going up again, which is good. So that's kind of, I did notice that. And I do believe that I can relate it to, I think YouTube is pushing short form content. I don't know how you feel about this. It's not that I'm not a fan of vertical video or short form content. I
Mhm.
think it's here to stay for sure. But there, as far as monetization and ad revenue, it's almost non-existent. You're
Right.
really just doing the short form content to send people to your long form, right? So for this podcast, I like to break it down to some really nice bite-sized clips into short form content in hopes that they'll go back and watch the long form video later,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
probably what you're referring to as well.
Exactly. exactly. And that's what a lot of people who have experimented with shorts basically say. It's like the money on it is barely anything. It's really just to grow that audience
Hmm.
and to reach more people. And hopefully they'll watch the longer form videos. And it does work though, because YouTube is so crazy because you can watch things that you're like, I never thought in my life I would ever watch something like this. But I recently came across a short. I don't know why it was fed to me on my feed, but it's this guy, he calls himself the hoof man or something, and he trims the hoofs of cows.
I had him on the podcast about 6 months ago.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Uh-huh.
crazy. And then I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And then I watched his long form videos to see what was going on. And I was
So
like, it does work.
I'm not sure what he's doing, but that's how I found him. Like he showed up in my feed where I'm like, oh my gosh, I was mesmerized by. I
Yeah.
believe it started with there's another guy who shears sheep and like he takes like these
Hmm.
animals that are
Hmm.
very ragged and he like shears off their coats and he gives them like these really nice makeovers. And it makes you just feel it's very satisfying. I think it's one of the things about the shorts is very satisfying. But I did discover him and then I had him on the podcast and it was so interesting to talk to him about like, hey, he's making a full time living and he's basically going to people's farms who have these animals and he's reaching out to them saying, hey, I'll do this for free if you let me video it. And he'll video it and put it up into shorts and he's making a ton of money doing it. So it's so cool what this platform allows you to do. And so I want to kind of
Yeah.
expound upon the monetization. Obviously, you're not just making money on ads. You wouldn't be able to pay those editors if it was just ad revenue. So how else are
No.
you monetizing and making money from the channel?
Yeah, we do direct sponsorships in pretty much every video. So we kind of map out the year and kind of fill up a slot. Basically, we say, like, okay, you want to work with us, you want us to feature your product or do a short ad in our video, about 45 to 60-second ad. We call it video integrations, right? Because it's integrated inside of the video. It's not a pre-roll ad that you see on YouTube for people that are wondering. So basically, we reserve the spot for them and then we just kind of make content each week with those sponsors in it. And sometimes it'll be a sponsorship and an affiliate link. So it'll be partial upfront and then affiliate, which is basically I earn a percentage of that revenue when somebody uses that link, my specific link, to make that purchase, usually paired with a discount code
Right.
to help get that conversion going. And I also have my own tools that I create as well. So I have a store that I sell different tools and templates that I develop. And recently we created a toolkit for After Effects and Premiere Pro and I actually partnered with a design team on that to help me with it and a customer support team, which is separate from my contract team that I have. This is kind of a separate partnership thing. And it's been so nice to have the customer support thing because I mean, you can imagine Dusty me having to respond to all the inquiries plus
Right.
make content. It's just not feasible, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like, four corners of the table, right? I have YouTube ad revenue, which is an okay kind of week
Sure.
one, and it fluctuates.
Hmm.
And then we have the brand deals, then we have affiliate marketing, and then the other corner of the table is the stuff that you develop as a creator that you sell to your audience, that
Hmm.
you make on behalf of yourself basically, like
Yes.
whatever you find useful. And so I started making smaller templates and then I realized, oh, maybe I could benefit making a larger pack. The next thing I'm working on are ebooks with sharing some of my knowledge that I've learned on YouTube as well. So yeah, I think it's good to have those four corners nice and
Yes.
steady. And that's kind of how we've been able to make a decent amount of income. I mean, it keeps growing and it's exciting. I know that we could be making a lot more and I've learned so much on because I'm not really a business person. I mean, I kind of am because I created a business. But it's kind of like it's a work in progress and it's always a work in progress, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's exciting. I love having my own business because you can always play around with different things and try out new things and you don't have that pressure of like pleasing a boss or something. You can be like, well, it
Yes.
didn't work out, so let's try something new. you know?
That is the coolest thing about being a creator and entrepreneur, is that you can have all these failures and these things that are that have failed, but you're learning from them along the way, and you can try different things and not worry about, like you said, the kind of overhead of an administrator or someone kind of telling you, hey, you have to meet this deadline or you have to do this. I've had this podcast started because of that, and this podcast is now a big revenue driver for me with sponsorships and
Right.
extending my network of influence as well. And so it's been a great experiment that I tried out, 8, 9 years ago, and it's now gotten to the point where it is today. I want to ask you, what is something that you wish you would have known sooner? Now that you're years into content creation, growing your business, what is something you look back and you're like, man, I wish I would have known that earlier. Maybe I would have even grown faster or made more money.
Mm, there's a couple things that come to mind. I mean, one thing that came to mind was, maybe I shouldn't have, necessarily done just Premiere in my name. Maybe I could have branded as my own name or something else. So that way it doesn't automatically think that I just do Premiere, because I cover more than just Premiere on my channel. And I feel like sometimes I wish I could have gone back and maybe rethought that. But at the same time, it's a very niche channel, and the niche channel works, right? Because it's very focused. And so a lot of times, like, oh, I want to like cover something else, but I would really have to create a whole nother channel for that. So, that's one thing that I maybe would go back and maybe rethink. But I think that at the same time I wouldn't, because it was part of my journey and process. But then in terms of focusing not on the name and the branding of it, but I think I would have paid closer attention to maybe different. Gosh, YouTube has changed so much in the since I started.
It has.
That's it's just, I don't know if I would go and change, because it was a product of the times. Like I honestly, I knew about SEO at the time I started YouTube, but at the same time you would see YouTubers like Casey Neistat at the time who wouldn't put any tags or SEO on their videos. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of it felt kind of silly for me. Like I didn't know how much I would have to put into that. I mean, being an SEO driven channel, I was paying close attention to that. Like what videos, what articles are on the internet, what are they titled, So I kind of had a good understanding of how it all worked. I maybe would have not done some interview style videos that just didn't do well. So I would have maybe focused on just like the shorter form content at that time. But I really don't have that type of mindset where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done
Mm-hmm.
that, because it's just part of the journey, man. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
With that being said, if someone's listening to this today and they're like, "Man, I want to start a YouTube channel or I'm trying to grow a channel right
sure.
now," what would be your advice to them in 2023 and going forward? Because you are right, YouTube has changed and has evolved into something completely different. You started 4 or 5 years ago. I started, over 11 years ago, and so YouTube, it looks different, it feels different. What would you say to those people?
I think, first of all, you have to be willing to morph and change over time,
Mm-hmm.
like we have. And you have to be open to that, because you have to evolve with the platforms and change. Hence, why we were just talking about the shorts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say that if you're going to create a channel, like, make sure that the name is kind of like catchy and clever, because once you come up with it, it's kind of hard to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, try to mix up your content. So like have like different styles of content. So, maybe you have an interview with somebody and that format works well. Maybe do that once a month, paired with another channel, paired with another type of video that maybe breaks down something that you do or something. Because then people are looking forward to, oh, this month they're going to interview this, or, they're going to do this process video this month. And just to keep your viewer engaged, because oftentimes I'll find that when I like go to a channel, it's just like kind of the same thing over and over again. It's like I get kind of like bored with that. So just try to like mix it up. And for topics that do work and styles that do work, keep doing those, and
Yes.
just your own little twist on it. So that's kind of my advice. And also like do one video a month kind of for yourself that's not necessarily feeding the algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
because you can often get caught up in like, oh, this is trending. I have to do a video on this. And it's like, yes, that might be a good idea, but is there anything else going on, whatever your topic is in your life or whatever with relation to your channel? How can you make a video on that? And maybe that could be the next trending
Mhm.
thing, you know? So you kind of have to like remember to not lose yourself and your interest in that process because then what's the point, you know?
Absolutely. Wonderful answer, by the way. You can tell your breadth of knowledge and your kind of duration that you've been on the platform. It just kind of speaks through kind of your answers. So I appreciate that. In closing today, I want to ask you what's next for you and your channel and what you're trying to do. You know, long term, short term, it doesn't really matter. What are you planning to do going forward?
Oh man. Well, I continue to do the weekly videos, of course, planning on doing some more shorts. I'm planning on doing some ebooks. You know, I was doing a lot of workshops recently, but I'm putting those on the side for now to focus on the ebooks that hopefully will be out in 2024. And gosh, there's what else is there beyond that? Who knows what will come? I think that's the beauty of this platform is
Mhm.
like I'm constantly inspired every day by different things that I see on the internet and different goals that I have. Maybe it means growing the team. Maybe we'll start editing for other people. I actually had a comment on a recent video and they're like, gosh, like you have so much resources and so many tools that you use. I'm surprised that you don't have your own video editing company.
Mm.
And I started to laugh a little bit because I kind of do, and we have edited for a few TikTokers and other clients, but we find that it's hard to take on more because YouTube just takes up most of the time.
Correct.
And so if I was going to explore something like this, it would really mean that I would really have to formalize my content like down to the T. So it'd be like pre-recording stuff for YouTube if I want to keep the channel going. Like, okay, I'm gonna film 2 months worth of content in these 2 weeks and just pass it off to editors, and then I'll focus on,
Right.
you know,
The other stuff.
growing the
Client
other.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have to hire a whole bunch of other people because really I would just want to run the company and maybe hire a project manager and some editors. But that's something that I've thought about for
Hmm.
sure. I've thought about
Absolutely.
maybe I should take this knowledge and maybe because I get so many people emailing me on the YouTube channel saying, hey, can you edit my music video? Hey, can you edit this? And it's just like I have to turn people away because I don't have time. So that's a potential.
Hmm.
Also, physical products is something we recently got into. We created a Premiere Pro keyboard. Um, it's a wireless keyboard and just other tools and stuff I think we'll want to develop as well. I mean, you can see that we have a lot.
Yes.
Ebooks, products, potentially
Yes.
video editing company. I feel like the sky's the limit, and I think that's the most exciting thing about YouTube is
It
that
is.
there's so much opportunity. So if you're thinking about creating a YouTube channel, that's already exposure. Even if your YouTube channel doesn't
Mm.
take off and it's not your main thing, it's definitely leading you to that next thing, that next client that will give you more work,
And
right?
entrepreneurship in general is just a beautiful thing because you can have so much flexibility and there is so many things that you can aspire to do without any or many restrictions, right? And that's the beauty of running your own business. So, Kelsey, you have been an amazing guest. I cannot wait to release this episode for my audience. All of your links, your YouTube channel, everything where to find you will be in the show notes of this episode. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to find Kelsey, I want to go reach out to her myself, I want to edit for her, right? You can reach out and find her there, and maybe you can get your foot in the door as well. Kelsey, thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much, Dusty.